Right now, as you are watching this, your brain is lying to you. It is telling you that your sadness is permanent, that your anxiety is who you are, that the heaviness in your chest, that fog behind your eyes, that low hum of dissatisfaction you carry every single day, that it is just life. That is a lie. And the worst part, you believe it. You have believed it for so long that you have built your entire identity around it. But what if there were ways, simple, almost absurdly simple ways to hack your own brain into a different state? Not in hours, not in weeks, in 20 seconds. Dr. Julie Smith, a clinical psychologist who has spent years studying how the brain constructs and deconstructs emotional states, reveals something that most people will never hear from their therapist. By the end of this video, you will understand 4 specific neurological tricks that can shift your emotional state in less time than it takes to check your phone. But this is not a feel-good listicle. This is not think positive and everything will be fine. This is about understanding why your brain works against your own happiness deliberately, systematically, every single day, and how to use its own mechanisms to turn the game around. Dr. Julie Smith does not sugarcoat this. She says the brain is not designed to make you happy. It is designed to keep you alive. And that difference, that gap between survival and fulfillment is where most of your suffering lives. The 4 tricks you are about to learn exploit that gap. They use your brain's own architecture against its default programming. And once you see how they work, you will not be able to unsee it. Here is what you need to understand before we go further. Your brain processes approximately 11 million bits of information every second, but your conscious mind, it handles about 50. That means 99.9% of what is happening inside your skull is happening without your awareness, without your permission, without your input. And here is where it gets dangerous. That unconscious machinery is not neutral. It has a bias, a negativity bias. Neuroscientists have confirmed this repeatedly. The brain gives roughly 5 times more weight to negative experiences than positive ones. A single critical comment from a coworker outweighs 5 compliments. One bad morning can color an entire week. One rejection can overshadow 100 acceptances. Dr. Julie Smith explains, this is not a flaw, it is an evolutionary feature. Your ancestors did not survive by noticing how beautiful the sunset was. They survived by noticing the rustle in the grass that might be a predator. Your brain is a threat detection machine that happens to be living in a world where the threats are emails, deadlines, and unanswered texts, but the mechanism is still running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, scanning for danger that is not there. And every time it finds something, a strange look from someone, a slight change in someone's tone, a vague sense that something is wrong, it floods your system with cortisol and adrenaline. Not because you are in danger, because your brain cannot tell the difference. That is the machine you are operating. That is the machine you are about to learn to override. The first trick is not psychological, it is physiological. And that is precisely why it works so fast, Doctor. Julie Smith points to research from Stanford University, led by neuroscientist Andrew Huberman, that identified something called the physiological sigh. It is the fastest known method to reduce stress in real time. Not meditation, not breathing exercises that take 20 minutes, a single pattern of breath that takes less than 20 seconds. Here is how it works. You inhale through your nose, a deep breath. Then, before you exhale, you take a second short inhale on top of the first one, a double inhale. And then you release a long, slow exhale through your mouth. That is it. 2 inhales through the nose, 1 long exhale through the mouth. Why does this work? Because of a structure in your lungs called the alveoli, tiny air sacs that sometimes collapse during shallow breathing, especially when you are stressed. The double inhale reinflates them, maximizing the surface area for gas exchange. The long exhale activates the parasympathetic nervous system, your body's brake pedal. It slows your heart rate. It drops your cortisol levels. It tells your amygdala, the brain's alarm system, to stand down. Doctor, Julie Smith says most people do not realize that the body controls the mind far more than the mind controls the body. When you are anxious, your breathing changes first. Your thoughts follow. So if you can interrupt the breathing pattern, you interrupt the entire anxiety cascade before it reaches your conscious mind. Think about that. Your brain is screaming danger, your palms are sweating, your chest is tight, and one deliberate breath pattern can shut the entire alarm system down in 20 seconds. But here is what most people get wrong. They wait until they are already drowning in anxiety to try this. By then, the prefrontal cortex, the rational part of your brain, has already been hijacked by the amygdala. Dr. Julie Smith recommends practicing the physiological sigh when you are calm so it becomes automatic, so that when the storm hits, your body knows the way out before your mind even registers the problem. This is not a coping mechanism. This is a neurological override. You are not managing your anxiety. You are cutting the wire before the bomb goes off. But changing your breathing only addresses the body. What about the relentless negativity loop running inside your head? Because that is where the second trick comes in, and this one attacks the problem at its source. Dr. Julie Smith talks about a concept from acceptance and commitment therapy called cognitive diffusion. And it might be the most counterintuitive thing you have ever heard about your own thoughts. Here is what most people do when a negative thought appears. They either believe it completely or they try to fight it. I am not good enough appears, and you either spiral into self-doubt or you try to argue with yourself, no, I am good enough, I have accomplished things. Neither works. And Dr. Julie Smith explains exactly why. When you believe the thought, you fuse with it. You become the thought. It is no longer an idea passing through your mind. It is reality. It is truth. It is you. And when you fight the thought, you give it more power. You engage with it, but you treat it as a worthy opponent, which means your brain categorizes it as important, which means it comes back louder and more frequently. Cognitive diffusion is the third option nobody teaches you. Instead of believing or fighting the thought, you observe it. You put distance between yourself and the thought, not by ignoring it, by reframing the way you experience it. Here is the 20-second version. When a thought like, I am worthless appears, you add a prefix. You say to yourself, I am having the thought that I am worthless. That is it. 7 extra words. And those 7 words change everything. Why? Because I am worthless is an identity statement. Your brain processes it as fact. But I am having the thought that I am worthless is an observation. It creates a gap between you and the thought. Suddenly you are not the thought. You are the one watching the thought. You become the observer, not the content. Doctor. Julie Smith says you can take it even further. I notice that I am having the thought that I am worthless. Now you have added a second layer of distance. The thought is still there, but it has lost its teeth. It is a cloud passing through the sky, not the sky itself. This is not positive thinking. This is not replacing bad thoughts with good ones. This is something far more powerful. It is changing your relationship to thinking itself. And neuroscience backs this up. Studies published in the journal Behavior Research and Therapy show that cognitive diffusion significantly reduces the believability and emotional impact of negative thoughts, often within a single session. But here is the part that makes this truly dangerous in the best possible way. Once you start practicing cognitive diffusion, you begin to realize something disturbing. Most of the thoughts you have been treating as facts your entire life are not facts at all. I am not attractive enough. People do not really like me. I will never be successful. These are not truths, they are stories. Stories your brain has been writing for years based on fragments of experience filtered through a negativity bias, reinforced through repetition until they felt as real as gravity. Doctor. Julie Smith says the moment you see this, truly see it, something shifts permanently. You stop being a prisoner of your own narrative. You become the author, but thoughts are only part of the equation. What about the emotions that ambush you without warning, the sudden wave of sadness, the spike of anger, the inexplicable heaviness that settles over you like a fog? Because the third trick addresses something your brain does automatically that almost no one knows about. And once you understand it, you gain power over emotions you thought were beyond your control. There is a part of your brain called the amygdala. You have heard of it. It is the alarm system, the emotional reactor, the part that fires before you even know what is happening. When you feel a sudden rush of anger or a wave of sadness or a spike of panic, the amygdala has already activated before your conscious mind catches up. For most people, this means emotions feel like they happen to them, like weather, like something beyond control. You do not choose to feel anxious. You do not choose to feel devastated. It just happens. And then you are stuck inside it, trying to think your way out of a problem that did not start in your thoughts. Dr. Julie Smith talks about a technique that neuroscientist Matthew Lieberman at UCLA discovered almost by accident. He was running brain scans on people experiencing intense emotions, and he asked them to do something simple: just name the emotion they were feeling, not analyze it, not explain it. Just label it. This is anger, this is sadness, this is fear. What happened in the brain scans shocked the research team. The moment someone put a name to their emotion, activity in the amygdala decreased significantly. And activity in the right ventrolateral prefrontal cortex, the brain region associated with processing and regulating emotions, increased. The simple act of naming the emotion was acting like a brake on the emotional response. Lieberman called it affect labeling. Dr. Julie Smith calls it one of the most underrated tools in psychology. Here is why it works. When an emotion is unnamed, it is a formless threat. Your brain treats it like an unknown danger, something to react to with full force. But the moment you name it, you categorize it. You move it from the threat detection system to the language processing system. You engage the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain that can actually do something useful with the information. Think about it. Something is wrong with me is terrifying. I am experiencing anxiety because I have a presentation tomorrow is manageable. Same emotion, completely different experience. The emotion has not changed. Your brain's relationship to the emotion has changed. And it takes 20 seconds, maybe less. Dr. Julie Smith says the key is specificity. I feel bad does not activate the same neural circuitry as I feel a tight knot of resentment because I was overlooked in the meeting today. The more precise you are, the more prefrontal cortex engagement you get, the more the amygdala quiets down. But there is a deeper layer to this that most people miss, and this is where Dr. Julie Smith's insight becomes truly transformative. When you practice affect labeling, consistently naming your emotions as they arise, day after day, you begin to develop what psychologists call emotional granularity, the ability to make fine-grained distinctions between emotional states. And research by Lisa Feldman Barrett at Northeastern University shows that people with higher emotional granularity are significantly better at regulating their emotions, making decisions under pressure, and maintaining psychological resilience. In other words, the more precisely you can name what you feel, the less power it has over you. Not because the emotion is weaker, because you are stronger. Your brain literally builds better emotional infrastructure the more you practice. But here is what makes this truly profound. Most people walk through life with a vocabulary of maybe 5 emotions: happy, sad, angry, scared, fine. That is like trying to paint the Sistine Chapel with 5 crayons. The human emotional experience is infinitely more nuanced than that. There is the difference between melancholy and grief, between irritation and resentment, between excitement and anxiety, which neurologically are almost identical states. The only difference is the label your brain assigns, doctor. Julie Smith says when you expand your emotional vocabulary, you are not just learning words, you are building neural architecture. You are giving your brain more categories, more file folders, more ways to organize experience. And A brain that can organize experience is a brain that does not get overwhelmed by it. That realization alone changes everything. But the fourth trick goes somewhere none of the others have gone. Because this one does not just change how you experience the present, it rewires how your brain constructs your entire perception of reality. And Dr. Julie Smith says this is the one most people will resist, precisely because it feels too simple to be real. This is the one that sounds almost too strange to be true. But the neuroscience behind it is solid, and Dr. Julie Smith has spoken about the connection between vision and mental state in ways that most psychologists never address. Here is the setup. When you are stressed, anxious, or in any kind of threat state, your visual system narrows. Your eyes focus on a single point. This is called foveal vision, tunnel vision. It is the same thing that happens to a prey animal when it spots a predator. Everything narrows, focus intensifies, the visual field contracts. And here is what most people do not know. This is not just a symptom of stress, it is a cause. The narrowing of your visual field sends a direct signal to your brain's stress circuits. It tells the amygdala, the sympathetic nervous system, the entire threat detection apparatus, something dangerous is here, lock on. Andrew Huberman's lab at Stanford, which Dr. Julie Smith frequently references, discovered that the relationship between vision and mental state works in both directions. If stress narrows your vision, then deliberately broadening your vision reduces stress. Not metaphorically, literally, neurologically. The technique is called panoramic vision or optic flow. Here is how you do it in 20 seconds. Without moving your eyes, expand your visual awareness to include your entire peripheral field. Instead of looking at one point, let your gaze soften. See everything at once, the edges of your visual field, the space above and below, the periphery you normally ignore. The moment you do this, something remarkable happens in your brain. The neurons that drive the stress response begin to quiet, your heart rate drops, your breathing slows naturally without any conscious effort to control it. The vigilance system stands down. Dr. Julie Smith explains that this works because panoramic vision is associated with the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest mode. In evolutionary terms, you only use wide field vision when you feel safe, when there is no predator, when the horizon is clear. So when you deliberately activate panoramic vision, you are essentially telling your ancient brain, there is no threat here. Stand down. Think about what this means. You are not arguing with your anxiety. You are not breathing through it. You are not trying to think your way out. You are using a sensory input vision to directly reprogram your brain's assessment of reality in 20 seconds. Dr. Julie Smith says this is particularly powerful because it bypasses cognition entirely. You do not have to believe anything. You do not have to think positively. You do not even have to be aware that it is working. The visual system communicates with the stress circuitry below the level of conscious thought. It is like finding a back door into your own nervous system, and here is where it becomes extraordinary. You can combine this with any of the other three tricks. Imagine this, you are about to walk into a meeting that terrifies you. Your chest is tight. Your thoughts are spiraling. In 20 seconds, you take a double inhale physiological sigh. You soften your gaze into panoramic vision. You name what you feel. This is anticipatory anxiety about being judged. And you notice the thought, I am having the thought that I am going to fail. 20 seconds. 4 interventions. And your entire neurological state has shifted. Not because you are pretending everything is fine, not because you have suppressed anything, but because you have engaged the specific neural mechanisms that your brain uses to downregulate threat, process emotion, and restore equilibrium. Dr. Julie Smith says this is not about becoming emotionless. It is about becoming emotionally agile. The goal is not to stop feeling. It is to stop being controlled by what you feel. There is an enormous difference between someone who is at the mercy of every emotional wave and someone who can feel the wave, name it, breathe through it, and choose how to respond. That difference is not personality, it is not talent, it is skill. And like any skill, it can be trained. But the deepest part of this, the part that changes not just moments but lives, is what happens when you practice these 4 tricks consistently over time. And that brings us to the revelation that ties everything together. Here is what Dr. Julie Smith wants you to understand, and it is the single most important thing in this entire video. Your brain is not fixed. Your emotional patterns are not permanent. The heaviness you carry, the anxiety you feel, the way sadness seems to follow you everywhere, none of it is written in stone. Neuroscience has proven beyond any reasonable doubt that the brain rewires itself based on repeated experience. This is neuroplasticity, and it is not a theory, it is a measurable, observable phenomenon. Every time you practice a physiological sigh, you strengthen the neural pathway between your prefrontal cortex and your parasympathetic nervous system. Every time you practice cognitive diffusion, you build the circuitry that separates you from your thoughts. Every time you label an emotion, you reinforce the bridge between your limbic system and your language centers. Every time you shift into panoramic vision, you train your visual cortex to override your threat detection system. Doctor. Julie Smith says the reason most people believe they cannot change is that they try something once, do not feel dramatically different, and conclude it does not work. But that is like going to the gym once, not seeing muscles, and concluding that exercise is fake. The transformation is not in the single repetition. It is in the accumulation. Research published in the journal Psychological Science shows that consistent emotional regulation practice over as little as 8 weeks can measurably alter the structure and function of the prefrontal cortex. The region literally grows denser, more connected, more capable of regulating emotional responses. What this means is staggering. The person you are in 8 weeks, if you practice these 4 tricks daily, is not the same person you are right now. Not metaphorically, neurologically. The brain that is generating your anxiety today will not be the same brain generating your experience 2 months from now. The hardware changes. Dr. Julie Smith talks about what psychologists call the hedonic baseline, your default level of happiness. Most people believe this is fixed. You are either a happy person or you are not. But the research says otherwise. The hedonic baseline can be shifted. It responds to consistent practice. It responds to the kinds of interventions you just learned. And here is the part that nobody tells you. Happiness is not an emotion. It is a skill. It is not something that happens to you when circumstances align. It is a capacity that you build rep by rep like a muscle. Dr. Julie Smith says the happiest people she treats in her clinical practice are not the ones with the best circumstances. They are the ones with the most developed emotional regulation skills. People who can feel pain without being destroyed by it, who can experience loss without losing themselves, who can sit with uncertainty without unraveling. That is not luck. That is not genetics. That is practice. And you now know the 4 specific practices that build it. But there is a final truth that ties all of this together, a truth about why most people never do what they just learned, even after they understand it perfectly. The greatest obstacle to your happiness is not ignorance. It is familiarity. Your suffering is familiar. Your anxiety is familiar. Your negative thought loops are familiar. And the brain, above all else, craves familiarity. It would rather be miserable and certain than happy and uncertain. Dr. Julie Smith says this is the hidden trap that keeps most people stuck. They learn the tools, they understand the science, they know exactly what to do, and they do not do it. Not because they are lazy, not because they are weak, because their brain has spent years building an identity around the suffering. I am an anxious person. I am someone who struggles with happiness. This is just who I am. And the moment you try to change, the brain resists, it sends up alarms. This does not feel right. This is not you. Go back to what you know. Dr. Julie Smith calls this the identity maintenance system, your brain's deep commitment to keeping you consistent, even when consistency means misery. That is why knowledge alone has never been enough. That is why reading about happiness does not make you happy. That is why understanding anxiety does not cure it. The knowing has to become doing. The doing has to become habit. The habit has to become identity. And that shift from I am trying to be happier to I am someone who regulates their emotional state, that shift is the real transformation, not the tricks themselves. The decision to use them until they stop being tricks and start being who you are. Dr. Julie Smith says something that stays with you long after you hear it. She says, you are not broken. You are running software that was designed for a world that no longer exists, and you have the ability to update that software. One breath, one thought, one moment at a time. 4 tricks, 20 seconds each. A lifetime of change. The physiological sigh to master your body. Cognitive diffusion to master your thoughts. Affect labeling to master your emotions. Panoramic vision to master your state. You now know what most people will never learn, not because it is hidden, but because they will hear it and do nothing. The question is not whether these work. The science is clear. The question is whether you will use them tomorrow morning when the alarm goes off, when the anxiety shows up, when the old familiar heaviness settles in. That is the only question that matters. If this resonated with you, if even one of these 4 tricks made something click, leave a comment telling me which one you are going to try first, not later, today, because the distance between knowing and doing is where most lives get lost. And if you are ready to go deeper into the psychology of emotional mastery, into the science behind why your brain does what it does, and into the tools that can actually change it, stay here, because what comes next goes even further. See you in the next one. Or rather, see you on the other side of the first 20 seconds that change everything.